I am a massive fan of Japanese horror, so it may come as a surprise to know that I have never actually seen any of the adaptations of Junji Ito's work yet, considering that this guy is the granddaddy of horror. For me, the more bizarre, the more crazy, the more off the wall, the more absolutely batshit that a Japanese horror movie is, the more I am going to be here for it. And when looking up movies that I hadn't seen yet, Uzumaki kept being described as one of the weirdest movies you will ever watch. So I'm here for it. In a small town in Japan, Hiri comes across her boyfriend's father silently videotaping a snail. Seemingly unaware of her presence, she thinks no more of it. Later, the man's obsession begins to spiral and become more and more bizarre. Soon, other inhabitants become possessed by other forms of spirals, with the entire town slowly becoming possessed. As always here on my channel, I'm now going to go and watch Uzumaki from the year 2000 off camera, so that way if you too want to watch this movie, nothing will be spoilt for you. Nobody wants to watch a movie that you've just watched somebody else watch from start to finish.
What is going on?
Okay, so where do I even begin with this one? I have no idea what I just watched. Okay, so I haven't actually read Uzumaki by Junji Ito, but I was looking at other people's reviews on Letterboxd because I felt like I was very much missing something, and it appears that the movie is a much more watered down version of the original manga, so this makes me feel better because apparently it's not just me that doesn't have a clue what they just watched. The movie is split into 4 sections, so I am going to briefly talk about each section and try and talk about what happens in them without actually going into spoiler territory. So Act 1 I found really slow, like painfully slow. There is a lot of people walking around, there's a lot of people having these like small talk conversations. There's no like reason why you should fear this like curse of the spirals. Like there's no tension or anything to like help build this up. There is like one guy who is acting like slightly different in a town full of people. He already acts like slightly weird and over the top anyway, so he's not exactly out of place in this like odd little town where everybody seems to think that they've got main character complex. Act 2, things picked up ever so slightly, and I mean like the tiniest bit things picked up. Like there's a couple of cool effects in this bit. There is a couple of deaths in Act 2. I had to think about that. There's a couple of deaths in Act 2. There's a little bit of blood, but hardly any, if I'm being honest. We're talking like fingertips kind of blood. There's a cool section with a washing machine, but apart from that, it is more of the same from Act 1. There's lots of people walking around and living their daily lives and having small talk conversations, and there is still no reason to fear the spiral curse, or like there's no tension. Like you don't care. Occasionally like people have got like spirals in their eyes to be like, oh, they're being slightly corrupted by this like thing, but you don't know why the thing is a thing to begin with. Like that's never explained. Side note, Yamaguchi is the most annoying character in the entire movie. So am I surprised by what happened to him? No. Now, Act 2 is the longest in the entire movie at 40 minutes. So at this point, you've had half an hour for Act 1, 40 minutes for Act 2, and there is 20 minutes left of the entire movie, and I still do not know where this cursed thing has come from, why I should fear this cursed thing, and what the hell is going on. Act 3. Now I know that the movie has a different ending to the actual manga, because when they decided to make this into a movie, the manga hadn't finished wrapping up. So I am aware that I have nothing to actually compare the end of this movie to, but I still still didn't know what was going on. Now, the spiral concept starts to come in a little bit more, it starts to get used more, there's some cool kind of effects that get brought into it, there's something to do with a hurricane, which again, comes out of nowhere, hasn't been foreshadowed in any kind of way, and then there's a woman's face in the sky, and a news reporter is like, oh, it's hurricane season, it's the first one of the season, and I was like, where has this come from? Like, is this to do with the curse? Is this just the weather on this tiny island in Japan? Like, somebody please explain to me. Now, when there is only 15 minutes to go in this movie, I suddenly started to have even more questions that were never answered. Like, why are there now suddenly 2 human-snail hybrids climbing the outside of the school, which then flee into the forest, which is, like, the briefest of mentions? And why does one of the students in the school, why has her hair become like a 6-foot sentient being that looks like it's made out of licorice spirals? Like, why is none of this explained? Like, is this in the manga? Because if it is, like, I need to read the book to find out, like, why everything was actually happening to begin with. Because this movie didn't tell me anything. And then Act 3 ends. And Act 4, which is like 2-3 minutes max, is like a series of photos that go through like a flip book, and you see all of these people in like an aftermath setting looking like a nightmare version of Betty Spaghetti, and then the movie ends and the credits start rolling. Like, I'm so confused. I feel like this movie said, let's play a game of Uno, and then it put down a chessboard and didn't tell me why we were playing chess. So much happens that it doesn't ever actually explain. And this kind of moves into the death sequences as well. Like, there's a few deaths, very few, to be honest, and you don't actually explicitly see anything. It either cuts away just as the person is gonna die, or it shows you the aftermath. Like, there's no gore really in this, there's no blood, like, it's a very underwhelming horror movie in that sense, considering what I've now read about the actual manga. There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of very close-up shots of people's faces with people acting in slightly over-the-top or bizarre ways. And I don't want to say that the acting is bad, I just want to say that the acting is different to the point where it is at times distracting. Like, if you're staring at somebody and they're like, we're talking like the camera is inches from somebody's face, like you can see the hairs and lines on somebody's face, they're that close. It's kind of distracting when they're then being extremely over the top with it and you don't know why. I love the Easter egg that Junji Ito is actually on a wanted poster on the, like, traffic cops booth thing, who is basically there to yell at our main character for riding a bike with another person, because that's illegal in Japan. I also think that the reference to when she's given a melon is really funny, because if you didn't know, fruit is really expensive in Japan, so seeing a, like, 16-year-old get really excited about melon is something. I was told that Uzumaki is a bizarre, over-the-top kind of movie, and it's a bizarre movie, but it is not over-the-top like I was expecting. Now, if you want something that is bizarre and over-the-top, I would recommend something like Gothic Lolita Battle Bear or Vampire Clay, which are 2 movies that I recently watched this year, and they are both bizarre, over-the-top Japanese movies. Like, Vampire Clay, though, has got some really good effects, so I would suggest checking out that one. I found myself feeling very, like, meh about Uzumaki in the end, and I feel like I now need to go away and read the source material and find out why everybody actually likes this story to begin with. Now, I'm hoping that it will give me answers, and the one thing I want answered is why all of this happened in the first place. I do feel like I have been kind of harsh on this movie, and I will be honest about that and say that it just isn't to my own personal tastes when it comes to Japanese horror, and because of this, I am going to give Uzumaki a 2 out of 5 stars. Now, I do think that the concept is unique enough. I think that the effects are fairly decent, considering this movie was made in the year 2000. And visually, it is not that bad to look at. But I do have more questions coming out of this movie than I went into it with. So there you have it, my initial thoughts and my review for Uzumaki from the year 2000. If you've also seen this movie, I would love to know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comment section down below. If you would like to know every horror movie that I watch, not just the ones I talk about here on YouTube, you can find me over on Instagram and on Letterboxd. And on Friday, I will be back with another festive horror movie review, because in the lead up to Christmas, that is what I'm doing every Friday here on my channel. So until next time, bye.